Good day, everyone. For today, we are going to discuss about the modifications and management of Sped programs for children with intellectual disability. For introduction, the American Associations on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, so AAIDD, states that intellectual disability is characterized by significant limitations in both intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior and must originate before the age of 18. The AAIDD definitions has involved through years of effort to reflect the ever-changing understanding of intellectual disability more clearly. In recent years, the concept of adaptive behavior has played an increasingly important role in defining and classifying people with intellectual disabilities. Intellectual functioning, often referred to as intelligence, includes an individual's ability to reason, plan, solve problems, think abstractly, comprehend complex ideas, and learn from experience. According to American Associations on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, or AAIDD, IDD is this disability characterized by significant limitations both in intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior and expressed in conceptual, social, and practical adaptive skills. In the United States, a widely used definition is taken from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which define IDD as significantly average general intellectual functioning, existing concurrently with a deficiency in adaptive behavior and manifested during the developmental period that adversely affects the child educational performance. For classifications to understand the diversity of people more clearly with the intellectual disability, several classification systems have been developed. So each classifications method reflect on attempt by the particular discipline such as medicine or education to better understand and respond to the needs of individuals with intellectual disability. So we will discuss the four of these methods. So for the severity of conditions, mild, moderate, severe, and profound, and for classification based on the needed support, intermittent, limited, extensive, and pervasive. For the next slide. For the intellectual disability and the levels of severity. For the severity of conditions, the extent up to which a person's intellectual capabilities and adapted skills differ from what is considered normal can be described by using terms such as mild, moderate, severe, or profound. So mild describe the highest level of performance, profound describe the lowest level. For the severity level, mild, the IQ level is 50 to 55 to approximately 70. Moderate IQ level is 35 to 40 to 50 to 55. Severe IQ level 20 to 25 to 35 to 40. And profound IQ level below 20 or 25. And for the intensity of support needed, in a daily living activities such as school, work, or home. For the mind, it's intermittent support on as needed basis, episodic or short term. For moderate, it's limited, consistent over time, but time limited. For severe, extensive, it's regular, consistent, lifetime support. Regular support, it at least one aspect such as schools, work, or home. Perform, it's pervasive, it's highly intensity across all environments, lifetime, and potentially life sustaining. So distinctions between severity levels associated with the intellectual disabilities are determined by the clinician's impressions of the severity of adaptive functioning. So according to American Psychiatric Association, severity is assessed across three domains. These are conceptual, social, and practical life skills. So for the conceptual skills, it include language and literacy, money, time and number concept, and self-direction. For social skills, it's related to interpersonal skills, social responsibility, self-esteem, social problem solving, and ability to follow rules. For the practical skills, it's involved activities of daily living, such as personal care, schedules, routine, safety, use of money, and use of the telephone, and those kinds of things. Okay, so now let's move to the lifespan approach to programming. So for infancy and toddler, or infancy 02 and toddler for TS, for the documentations, it's individualized family service program. Okay, so for the focus is family caregiver, the case managers, pediatricians, developmental behavioral pediatricians, orientations and mobility, and families. For the program, it's early interventions, infants as stimulations program, individualized family service program, or IFSP. For early interventions, so interventions based on the normal patterns of growth, it's referred to as in developmental milestone because it seeks to develop, remedy, or adopt learning skills based on the child variation from what is considered normal. For the infant simulation program, focus on acquisitions of sensory motor skills and intellectual development. Infant stimulations involves learning simple reflex activities and equilibrium reactions. Subsequent interventions that expands into all areas of human growth and development. For the Individualized Family Service Program, or IFSP, if after the initial evaluations, a child is eligible for the early intervention program, the parent will receive an individual family service program, or IFSP, which explain the service recommended for a child and how early interventions will help the parents to support the child. Mm. For the preschools, it is the transitions for formal schooling, and the documents its individualized education program. So it also involved programs individualized education program includes the behavior intervention program, transition program, mainstreamings, and inclusions. And the tips for the families, promote family learning about the diversity of all people in the context of understanding a child with intellectual differences, become familiar with the Individualized Family Service Plan, or IFSP, and how it can be served as a planning tool to support the inclusion of child in the preschool programs that involve students without disabilities. For teachers, to focus on the child's individual abilities first. Whatever the labels have been placed on the child will have a little to do with the instructional needs. Begin with a simple task and move more complex ones as the child masters each skills. For the preschool's personnel, support the inclusions of young children with the intellectual disability in classrooms and programs. And for the school age, the document also is about the individual's education program, and the programs include behavior intervention program, transition program, mainstreamings, and inclusion. So for the tips for the families, it actively participates with the multidisciplinary team in the development of child individual's education program. So teacher recognize children with the intellectual disability for their own accomplishment within the classroom rather than comparing them to those peer without disabilities. And for the school personnel, help facilitate parental collaborations in the IAP process during the high school years by helping the schools multidisciplinary team value parental input that focus on the desire include that their child in the mainstream of the school. Parents will be more active when school personnel have general and positive contact with the family. So next. For the secondary, it's the level of it. It's about the interest explorations. So the program is individual education program and include behavioral intervention program, transition survey plans, vocational or employment preparations, and productivity enhancement. For the families, it's create opportunities for your child to participate in activities that are interest them. So beyond the school day, with the same age peer who are not disabled or including high school clubs, sports, or just hanging out in the local mall. So support the students for the teacher, it supports the students with the intellectual disability in becoming involved in the extracurricular activities. If you are the faculty sponsor of the club or organizations, explore whether these students are interested in how they could involve. For the school personnel, help the facilitate parental collaborations in the IEP process during the high school years by helping the school's multidisciplinary team value parental input that focuses on this desire to include their child in the mainstream of the school. Parents will be more active when school personnel have the general positive contact with the family. And for the secondary to post secondary, age 14 to 17, it is age of minority, and the program is individualized education program. So the goals of an educational program for adolescents with intellectual disability are to increase personal independence, enhance opportunity for participations in the local community, prepare for employment, and facilitate successful transitions to the adult years. So for the adolescents with intellectual disabilities need opportunities for interactions with peers without disabilities. So access to community events, sustain social relationship, and involvement in choices that affect their lives. And so it is very important to the children or for the child with this intellectual disability to interact with other peers or regular peers. For the post-secondary, it's 18 to 21 or age of majority programs or individual educational programs. So employment training for the students with intellectual disability is shifting from the isolations and getting ready orientations of the sheltered workshop to authentic community employment goals, and the objective are according to the demands of community work settings and the functioning levels of the individual. Sorry. Okay, so work is crucial measure of any person's success during adulthood. So providing the primary opportunity for social interactions, a basis for personal identity and status, and a chance to contribute to the community. So these needs are basic to adults who have intellectual disability, just as they are for their peers without disabilities. So now let's move to the research and indicates that the people with the intellectual disability can work in community employment if the adequate training and support are provided. So, following are the some suggested guidelines in developing and comprehensive employment training program for students with intellectual disabilities. Students should have the opportunity to make informed choices about what job they want to do and where they want to work. Students should receive employment training in community settings prior to graduations from high school. Employment training should focus on work opportunity present in the local area where individuals currently live. The focus on the employment training should be more on specific job training as students approach graduation, and collaboration between the schools and other service agency must be part of the employment training program. Now let's move to the least restrictive environment and placement option. So least restrictive environment or LRE is a guiding principles in the Individuals with a Disability Education Act or IDEA. So LRE plays a critical role in determining not only where the students will spend her or his time in school, but also how special education services will be provided. Specifically, the LRE requirements within the IDEA necessitate that students with disabilities receive their education alongside their peers without disability to the maximum extent appropriate. Students should not be removed from the general education classroom unless learning cannot be achieved even with the use of supplementary aids and services. So LRE is determined on the case by case basis during the development of the student's individualized education program. So it's the IEP. So during this process, the IEP team or the multidisciplinary group of professionals and the students' parents discuss the what individualized program of instructions and related services, also referred to as services and support, the students required based on his or her present levels of performance in the areas of strengths and needs. So this service and support should be enable the students to make progress toward meeting identified academic or functional annual goals. And annual goals, and be involved and make progress in the general education curriculum as well as to participate in extracurricular and other non-academic activities. So it's take part in these activities with other students both with and without disabilities. So choosing the appropriate LRE is important to ensure that the students receive instruction need to allow the students to progress. The LRE is not any specific placement. Rather, it is the most appropriate placement for a child that is chosen from a range of options. The placement, it is a settings where the IEP can be implemented. It is a flexible arrangement to meet the child's individual's needs and can range from separate classroom or school all day or a part of the day to all day in a regular classroom with appropriate supported services. And the IAP team should also consider any potentially negative effects of a placement on the child on the advocacy of services that child may receive. The team should also look at the location of the services, neighborhood school allocations, access to non-disabled age-mate peers, access to community-based activities, access to work locations as appropriate, age of students for students who are 18 to 21 years of age, community with typical age peers with peers is the regular education environment. Individual transition planning will include job placement, work experience, and or independent living activities in the community. Okay, so thank you. And next presenter.